This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
This has certainly been an interesting week for hot takes. A lot of interesting stuff has been said by a lot of folks in a lot of comment sections on the internet. So let's just break it down. Let's get into some of the stuff y'all said in my comment section that I want to, have more of a conversation about. And as always, I want to keep it clear. This video isn't about roasting bad takes I see in my comment section. I know a lot of people use the hot take format to do that. I'm trying to have more of a conversation. Sometimes somebody says something so crazy, I got to put it on here and roast it. But I'm more looking for conversations to be had based on things people are saying in the comment section. So that being said, got this one from Tracy, a badged member. Big shout out to Tracy for being badged. All right. The media kills me. The Browns are the most definitely working to develop not only Shedeur, but Dylan as well. This was under my video about how the Browns worked as a team to develop everybody, how everybody's been putting in extra work. I honestly feel they've drafted Dylan to be a bridge quarterback and Shedeur's developmental quarterback, but they also work with all the young players. So for the media to continue the narrative is just frustrating. Shedeur has handled this all so humbly. Yeah, I think there's a lot there from what you have said. Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy for people to run so heavily. And again, I'm not talking about fans. Fans are going to do whatever fans do. But for people in the media who, are paid to do this and paid to know better, to run so easily with a narrative that would involve a team that drafted a player working counterintuitively against their own interests to not develop that player on purpose, right? Basically saying, explicitly, that's the word I'm looking for. People are explicitly saying the Browns are trying to sabotage a player that they drafted in Shedeur Sanders, when that sentence makes no sense. Why would you draft somebody that you don't want to perform? Why would you waste not just one draft pick, but 3 selections, right? You use 2 6-round picks, and then you use those picks to get the 140 of selection. Why would you do all of that for a player that you don't want to develop? And instead of people asking that very reasonable, logical question at the start of their analysis, people have just assumed that that was the case because of everything else that they want to bring into this conversation about how they feel about how black quarterbacks get treated in the NFL, how they feel about how Deion Sanders gets treated in general, how people react to Deion Sanders, and how people are reacting to Shedeur Sanders because of that, and this, that, and the third, right? People are bringing all of that other stuff into the conversation before they're even asking the first logical question of hey, why would a team trade up to sabotage Shedeur Sanders? It makes no sense to me, right? It doesn't even pass the initial logic test that it needs to pass. And that's kind of crazy, right? With that being said, it's wild to me how much people have just ran with that narrative to the point to where they're just assuming that Kevin Stefanski is being unprofessional when he has no track record of being unprofessional. Some people are assuming that Kevin doesn't want to play Shedeur because he's a black quarterback, when Kevin has a track record that says the exact opposite. This guy has played the most amount of black quarterbacks of any coach in my life. And that doesn't mean that Kevin, is some kind of civil rights legend because of that, right? But it does demonstrate that that's not a factor in who he starts at quarterback or not, or who he prefers at quarterback, or at least so much to the point where he would willingly sabotage somebody that they drafted to do so, right? I think people are pointing him out to be something that he's not even provided evidence that he could be, all because there are other narratives that people want to push through that requires people to play different roles for those narratives, and they're casting Kevin regardless of his history, regardless of what he's done or has not done in the past, in these specific roles to fit this narrative. So yeah, that is very frustrating, and I imagine it's super frustrating for Kevin Stefanski, who, look, the NFL and people in the NFL, there's certainly reason to believe that racism plays a factor in certain things that happen in the NFL. Nobody's denying that, or at least I'm not denying that. But Kevin Stefanski has not done anything in his time in Cleveland to make me think that he is a racist, right? And for that to be thrown at him is kind of wild, right? That all being said, and it's thrown at him so haphazardly, just so casually. People are suggesting this about him, his professionalism, and his character, which I imagine is frustrating for him. That being said, I do think Shedeur has handled this really well. And I think that the young guys around him and the team around him have worked around it well. Everybody else is making this a shit show, but it seems like they have handled the shit show pretty well, which, kudos to them. That being said, I want to continue with these hot takes by thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Chase Brown says this: TJ currently has 7 sacks. Malik Collins has 6.5. The conversation is over. I said this, I think, a year or two ago, and it's one of my best takes, in my opinion. But Myles and TJ started to feel like LeBron and Carmelo a few years ago. So for those of you who don't really know the full context of this, right? LeBron and Carmelo were in the same draft class. Now, Carmelo obviously went after LeBron. LeBron went number 1 overall. LeBron was much more hyped up. But Carmelo had a strong fan base because, one, Carmelo wasn't a high school kid. He was somebody who played at Syracuse for a year, and I believe he won a national championship at Syracuse, had a really nice Final Four run. So there were some people who came in and they thought to themselves, if we're looking at the state of the game of where LeBron is, because at that time the conversation about LeBron was what he could be and not what LeBron was. And that was frustrating to people on the Carmelo side who were talking about, hey, this is where LeBron is, this is where Carmelo is, and if we're going skill for skill, Carmelo was more skilled at the time of the 2003 draft, right? And for the most part, in the early parts of both their careers, you could make the argument that Carmelo was the better player for I think LeBron's rookie year. There's some argument that Carmelo should have won Rookie of the Year, and I think up until about 2007, you could argue that they were similar on a similar level as players, right? So the Carmelo LeBron thing was a real thing for a little while. And then LeBron, right around the time where he got to his first NBA finals, he just ascended to a place that Carmelo wasn't going to ascend to. And the conversation stopped being about what LeBron is going to be and how LeBron is living up to what everybody thought he was going to be. And once that happened, Carmelo, he slowly was rising every year, and he's a Hall of Famer, but LeBron was just in a different stratosphere. The Myles, Garrett, TJ Watt thing is the football version of that. Because, in the early parts of both their career, you could argue they were going tit for tat. TJ had the better stats. TJ was putting up better numbers, but TJ was also on better teams. TJ had more help, right? So they were even, but around 2023, it started to lean more towards Myles, and TJ was just kind of staying the same. And now Myles is in a completely different stratosphere than the TJ Watt conversation. So to me, it feels like Carmelo, LeBron. TJ is going to be a Hall of Famer. TJ is going to go down as one of the better players of his generation, but continuing to compare TJ Watt to Myles Garrett, it's only going to do him a disservice, right? Especially since Myles Garrett is doing just incredible stuff at this point of his career, and he seems to be on an upward trajectory, and it seems like TJ at the best, you could say, is on a plateau at this point of his career. TJ's still a bad boy, right? 6.5 sacks is nothing to sneeze at. 7 sacks is nothing to sneeze at. TJ's still one of the best out there, but, you know, we comparing TJ to Myles, it's a whole different conversation now. You know what I mean? Much like LeBron to Carmelo. If you are alive for that, let me know what you think of that comp. But that's the closest thing I can kind of comp it to. Over in the conversation of Myles Garrett again, we got ADAJ who says this. A 45-year-old Unc Browns fan. I have seen them all. Reggie White, Bruce Smith. By the way, Bruce Smith was Myles' mentor leading into the draft. Lawrence Taylor, Jared Allen, Richard Dent. He pulling out some names. Why? Strahan. I've seen them all. I've never seen a defensive tackle or edge now wreck a game so drastically by himself. Everybody all offseason when Myles was extended speculated that he stayed because Barry had a plan for QB and all that. What if Barry's telling him, we're going to get Mason Graham, you get Graham Hall Jr., and now Myles 10 sacks in one game, 10. And now Myles 10 sacks in one game, 10? That's just filthy. Well, not 10 sacks in one game, but you know what he means. 10 sacks in one game. He's talking about the team. Yeah, that's filthy. Most of the top legends in the sack game, they were on winning teams. Myles hasn't had the luxury of pinning his ears back all 8 seasons. These guys are something special. Could you imagine if Myles was allowed to play like this? Like the old timers were, where there weren't roughing calls so fast. My God, he'd be over 300. That is something. You bring up a great point, and I appreciate, because I think sometimes when we get caught up in the sports talk, it's always like this dynamic of older guys talking about how much tougher it was for certain people, and it never goes like the energy never goes back and forth, right? So I appreciate you, acknowledging this. But yeah, like if Myles played in that earlier era, right? Like, because I know people are going to bring up if Myles doesn't get the sack record in 16 games, oh, well, Michael Strahan got it. It's a difference. But also think about, like, guys like Strahan and especially guys before him were just allowed to do more, right? You're allowed to be a lot more physical. You weren't having to watch how you attack the quarterback. You didn't have to worry about a sack being taken away because you landed on the guy funny or something silly like that. There's just so many ways you can get that number taken away from you now that I think it does matter. But yeah, I thought that was a great post. I just wanted to highlight that, because I want to hear more from folks who did watch Reggie White, who did watch Lawrence Taylor, who did watch Bruce Smith, and what they think about what was going on back then and what's going on right now with Myles. It's impossible for me, because I was not alive for the context of those guys' career. Even somebody like Michael Strahan, it was very early, right? Like, I think I was still a preteen by the time he had been done in the NFL and started doing morning shows. So yeah, for me, it's hard. It's a hard conversation to have, because I don't think I have the context to be able to have that conversation properly. But I think it's going to be interesting to see where some of the older fans feel about this, because, Myles is doing stuff that transcends comparing him to guys who are just in his era. And I think that just tells you how great Myles has been. That when you're having these cross-generational conversations, that's greatness. You know what I mean? Like, that's good. Because think about how often we're talking about, is this guy better than this guy that's in the league right now? You know what I mean? We don't often have conversations about, is this guy better than the guy who was on top of the league in the 80s? So yeah, continue to share your thoughts. I want to hear from more of y'all about Myles and where you think he stands with Reggie and all that, because he's starting to enter the place of his career and the place in his legacy where that's going to start to matter more. Real says this. The funny thing about the Wildcat comments when it comes to Sanders is that the Sanders fans were saying that was a detriment to Gabriel back when they ran with Gabriel. It's funny to see how they shift. So, yeah, there were people saying this and people bringing this up. When the Browns ran Wildcat with Dillon Gabriel, people were saying, see, the coaching staff doesn't believe in Dillon Gabriel because they're running Wildcat. And then they run it with Shedeur, and that's probably why there's a weird reaction to running Wildcat. This is, again, why I think it's just a pretty good example of why it's okay to just not talk all the time, right? When it comes to some of this shit, because people wanted to just run the gums about, oh, look, they don't like Dillon Gabriel. They're running Wildcat with them. And it's like, now, what did they run Wildcat with Shedeur? Now you got to act like that's a bad thing. And in order for you to act like it's a bad thing, you got to sound like Josina Anderson on the internet. That's why Josina out there acted like it was a bad thing that the Browns ran Wildcat, is because she dug in on her heels and said it about Dillon Gabriel. So now, in order to look consistent, you feel the need to say something about something that didn't have shit to do with shit anyways, to begin with. You see how craziness just leads into more craziness? This is why I've been saying, hey, let's stay normal about this. Let's just take it play by play. Let's just let it roll out, because I don't want to get to a point to where in order to win an argument, I'm out here doubling down on dumb shit. And then when the same dumb shit happens to the other quarterback, I got to double down on more dumb shit. It's silliness. Let's just call it as we see it, see what we know, and talk about what we know. But the Wildcat stuff is just hilarious to me because the Browns want to run the ball more than anything. It didn't say anything about Dillon Gabriel when they were running Wildcat. And the same is true with Shedeur. It doesn't say anything other than Quincy Judkins is our best player on offense. That's what it says to me. I don't know how more people haven't come down to that conclusion. You know what I mean? The Browns are running Wildcat because number 10 is the best player on offense. That's why, regardless of who's out there at quarterback. It's not really a big mystery to figure out, but you got Josina Anderson talk about it's bad that the Browns ran Wildcat and scored 2 touchdowns off of it, 14 points in the season where we struggled for points because we're not giving reps to somebody in a game we trying to win. It's ridiculous, nonsensical, dumb shit that we going through right now. Like, I can't sugarcoat it anymore. It is what it is. And I was early to it, and I feel like now more people are catching on, but I don't think we even close to done. I don't even think we even close to done. All right, 97 Buckeye says this. The young man, talking about Shedeur, has started 1 game against a terrible Raiders team, and people are already ready to crown him as a franchise quarterback. We need to slow our roll dramatically on Sanders. I would love to see him step up and be the man, but we're a long way from that. He has some very obvious issues to work through. I need to see him really have a solid 300-yard game based on his passing and not just the running back going for 60 on a 1-yard pass before I feel comfortable skipping a top quarterback in next year's draft. Yeah, I would agree with this. I would agree. Here's the thing, and this is not going to be popular. It's not going to be popular as a take. It's not going to be popular if they do it. But it probably would be what they should do. The Browns shouldn't take quarterback off the board regardless of what they see. They really shouldn't. Like, if there is a quarterback that they like in the first round, they have to pick to take him. They should take him. Because regardless of what you see out of Shedeur this year, you're not going to get a big enough sample to be able to bet the farm on it. Right? And I'd rather be in a situation like Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, than be in a situation where I bet the farm on a 5th round pick and it didn't work out. Me personally, right? You know, if you bet the farm on Shedeur and it doesn't work out and you didn't draft the backup plan, then what's up? The backup plan is Dillon Gabriel now. You feel good about that? I don't. You know, so if they're within range to get a quarterback, even if Shedeur looks good, they should probably do it. They should probably do it. And that's not going to be popular. Maybe we can have more conversations about, do you trade up? What do you do to ensure your position? But that's kind of how I feel about it. And I would agree with you, Buckeye. But that's it for the hot takes. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.